Most people think talking to themselves is strange or useless, but it's the words repeated in silence that shape belief. Champions don't wait for praise, they speak victory into existence. Reality begins with inner dialogue. Speak strength, speak clarity, speak success until thought becomes truth and truth becomes life. The conversation you have with yourself is the most important conversation you will ever have, and it is happening right now in this moment. Shaping every aspect of your reality with each word you speak silently in the chambers of your mind. Most people believe that talking to themselves is a sign of madness. Yet the truth is that not talking to yourself consciously and deliberately is the real madness. For you are allowing random thoughts, inherited beliefs, and unconscious patterns to dictate the direction of your life without any conscious input from your true self. Every successful person throughout history has discovered this fundamental secret. The inner dialogue creates the outer experience. And when you master the art of conscious self-communication, you become the architect of your own destiny rather than a victim of circumstance. The ancient wisdom keepers understood this principle so deeply that they built entire spiritual practices around the power of internal communion, recognizing that the voice within holds more authority than any external voice could ever possess. When you speak to yourself with intention, clarity, and unwavering conviction, you activate dormant potentials within your consciousness that have been waiting for your recognition and direction. This is not merely positive thinking or wishful hoping. This is the deliberate programming of your subconscious mind through the most direct pathway available, the pathway of internal speech that bypasses the filters and resistance mechanisms that often block external suggestions. Consider the farmer who plants seeds in fertile soil and tends to them daily with water, nutrients, and careful attention. The farmer does not doubt that the seeds will grow, does not question whether the earth will respond, does not wonder if the sun will provide the necessary energy for growth. The farmer simply follows the natural laws that govern growth and manifestation, trusting in the process that has been proven countless times throughout history. Your mind is that fertile soil, your thoughts are the seeds, and your internal dialogue is the daily tending that determines what grows in the garden of your life. I have witnessed individuals transform their entire existence simply by changing the way they speak to themselves in the quiet moments of reflection and decision. A woman who had struggled with feelings of unworthiness for decades began telling herself each morning that she was deserving of love, respect, and abundance. And within months, her relationships improved, her career advanced, and opportunities began flowing into her life as if by magic. A man who had accepted poverty as his permanent condition started having daily conversations with himself about prosperity and success, visualizing and affirming his financial growth. And gradually his business ideas became clearer. His confidence increased, and his income multiplied beyond his previous limitations. These transformations did not occur through external manipulation or lucky coincidences. They happened because these individuals learned to align their internal communication with their desired outcomes rather than reinforcing their unwanted circumstances through unconscious mental repetition. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined, does not differentiate between external experiences and internal declarations, does not judge whether your thoughts are logical or illogical. It simply accepts whatever you consistently feed it through your internal dialogue and begins working to make those mental patterns manifest in your physical reality. This is why talking to yourself becomes a sacred practice when done with awareness and purpose. For you are literally programming the most sophisticated computer ever created, your own mind, with specific instructions about what you want to experience in your life. The quality of your self-talk determines the quality of your emotions, the clarity of your decisions, the strength of your motivation, and the persistence of your actions toward your goals. When you speak to yourself as you would speak to a beloved friend who deserves encouragement, support, and unwavering belief in their potential, you create an internal environment where success becomes inevitable rather than accidental. Yet most people use their internal dialogue as a weapon against themselves, repeating limiting beliefs, rehearsing past failures, and reinforcing fears that keep them trapped in cycles of mediocrity and dissatisfaction. They speak to themselves with harsh criticism, constant doubt, and persistent negativity, then wonder why their lives reflect these internal patterns in the form of struggle, disappointment, and unfulfilled dreams. The power of self talk works both ways, and you are always choosing which direction to point this incredible force toward creation or destruction, toward expansion, toward possibility or limitation. The mechanism through which internal dialogue transforms into external reality operates according to universal principles that govern all manifestation, principles that remain consistent whether you understand them or not, whether you believe in them or not, whether you use them consciously or unconsciously. Your subconscious mind processes approximately 11 million bits of information every second, filtering this vast stream of data through the beliefs, expectations, and mental patterns established by your habitual thoughts and internal conversations. When you consistently tell yourself that you are capable, worthy, and destined for success, your subconscious begins highlighting opportunities, ideas, and resources that align with these beliefs, while filtering out information that contradicts your new self concept. This selective attention phenomenon explains why two people can experience identical circumstances, yet perceive completely different realities based on their internal programming. The person who maintains internal dialogue focused on abundance notices opportunities everywhere, feels grateful for small blessings, and attracts situations that reinforce their prosperity mindset. Meanwhile, the person whose self talk centers on scarcity notices problems, feels victimized by circumstances, and attracts experiences that confirm their beliefs about limitation and struggle. Both individuals are using the same creative mechanism, but they are programming it with opposite instructions through their internal communication patterns. A businessman I encountered had spent years struggling to grow his company despite working countless hours and implementing every strategy he could discover. His internal dialogue consistently focused on his competitors' advantages, his own limitations, his fear of failure, and his doubts about his worthiness to succeed at a higher level. When he began changing these internal conversations to focus on his unique value, his natural abilities, his vision for growth, and his certainty that success was his birthright, his business began transforming almost immediately. New clients appeared, better opportunities emerged, innovative ideas flowed more freely, and his confidence attracted the people and resources necessary for expansion. The transformation occurred not because external circumstances changed, but because his internal environment shifted to align with his desired outcomes rather than his feared limitations. His subconscious mind, now programmed with success-oriented beliefs through consistent positive self-talk, began guiding his attention toward solutions instead of problems, possibilities instead of obstacles, and actions that moved him forward instead of keeping him stuck in familiar patterns of struggle. This same principle applies to every area of human experience, from health and relationships to creativity and spiritual growth. Your body responds to the messages you send through internal dialogue, either supporting healing and vitality when you speak to yourself with love and encouragement, or manifesting stress and illness when you constantly criticize and worry. Your relationships reflect the way you speak to yourself about your worthiness of love, respect, and companionship. Your creative abilities flourish or diminish based on whether your internal voice encourages experimentation and growth or criticizes every attempt at self-expression. The revolutionary aspect of this understanding is that you need no external permission, no special circumstances, no particular skills or talents to begin transforming your life through conscious self-communication. You already possess the most powerful tool for change that exists anywhere in the universe, your own mind, and you can begin using it more effectively immediately, simply by paying attention to your internal dialogue and deliberately directing it toward your desired outcomes. Scientific research has validated what mystics and spiritual teachers have taught for millennia. The brain cannot distinguish between real and imagined experiences when those imagined experiences are vivid, detailed, and emotionally charged. This means that when you speak to yourself with conviction about your goals as if they were already accomplished, your neural pathways begin forming as if you had actually achieved those goals, creating the mental blueprint that guides your unconscious actions toward manifestation. Athletes have discovered this principle through visualization and positive self talk that dramatically improves their performance without additional physical training. Musicians, artists, and performers use internal dialogue to overcome stage fright, access creative flow states, and maintain confidence during challenging presentations. Entrepreneurs employ conscious self communication to maintain motivation during difficult periods, generate innovative solutions to business problems, and attract the partnerships and resources necessary for growth. The quality of your internal dialogue determines not only what you achieve, but who you become in the process of achievement. For every word you speak to yourself either reinforces your current identity or helps create a new identity aligned with your highest potential. Identity is not fixed or permanent. It is a fluid concept that responds immediately to the stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you are capable of, and what you deserve to experience in your life. When you begin speaking to yourself as the person you want to become, rather than reinforcing the person you have been, you initiate a transformation that reaches into every cell of your being and every aspect of your experience. Most people maintain their current circumstances by continuously reinforcing their existing identity through unconscious self-talk that confirms their limitations, justifies their fears, and validates their excuses for not pursuing their dreams. They tell themselves they are not smart enough, not talented enough, not lucky enough, not connected enough, not young enough, not experienced enough, creating an internal environment where growth becomes impossible and change feels threatening rather than exciting. A teacher who had worked in the same position for 15 years, while dreaming of becoming a published author, spent her internal conversations convincing herself that writing was too competitive, that she lacked the necessary talent, that successful authors possess some special quality she could never develop. Her self talk reinforced an identity of limitation and impossibility until she decided to experiment with new internal conversations. She began speaking to herself as an author would speak, thinking about her stories with excitement rather than doubt, visualizing her books in readers' hands, and affirming her natural storytelling abilities. Within 6 months, she had completed her first manuscript. Within a year, she had found a publisher. Within 2 years, she had left teaching to write full time, not because external circumstances magically aligned, but because her internal identity transformation guided her toward actions, opportunities, and connections that were always available, but previously invisible to someone who identified as merely a teacher with impossible dreams. This identity shift occurs through the repetition of new internal narratives that gradually overwrite the old programming stored in your subconscious mind. Every time you speak to yourself with confidence about your abilities, you strengthen neural pathways associated with confidence. Every time you remind yourself of past successes and future possibilities, you reinforce patterns of optimism and expectation that influence your perception of current opportunities. Every time you encourage yourself through challenges rather than criticizing your struggles, you develop resilience and persistence that carry you through difficulties that would stop someone with different internal dialogue patterns. The process requires consistency and patience, for the subconscious mind changes gradually through repetition, rather than instantly through single, powerful experiences. Just as physical muscles grow stronger through regular exercise rather than one intense workout, your mental patterns develop through daily practice of conscious self-communication rather than occasional moments of positive thinking. The compound effect of thousands of encouraging internal conversations creates momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable, carrying you toward your goals even when external circumstances seem challenging or uncertain. Your internal dialogue also affects your emotional state throughout each day, determining whether you feel energized or drained, hopeful or discouraged, motivated or paralyzed by fear. Emotions are not random occurrences that happen to you. They are direct responses to the thoughts and internal conversations you maintain moment by moment. When you speak to yourself with kindness and encouragement, you generate emotions that support productive action and creative thinking. When your self-talk focuses on problems, failures, and limitations, you create emotional states that inhibit performance and cloud your judgment. A salesperson who had experienced declining results for several months noticed that his internal dialogue had become increasingly negative, filled with doubts about his abilities, complaints about market conditions, and fears about his financial security. As his self talk grew more pessimistic, his energy decreased, his confidence diminished, and his interactions with potential clients became less enthusiastic and persuasive. When he consciously shifted his internal conversations to focus on his past successes, his value to clients, and his enthusiasm for helping people solve their problems, his emotional state improved dramatically, his energy returned, and his sales results began climbing immediately. The transformation of internal dialogue from unconscious habit to conscious tool requires developing awareness of the constant stream of thoughts and conversations flowing through your mind throughout each day. For most people, remain completely unaware of their mental chatter until they deliberately focus attention on observing their internal communication patterns. This observation process itself begins changing your self-talk, since consciousness naturally gravitates toward more positive and productive patterns when you are paying attention, rather than operating on autopilot. Becoming aware of your internal dialogue is like turning on a light in a room that has been dark for years, suddenly revealing both the treasures and the obstacles that have been influencing your life without your conscious knowledge. Many people discover that their self-talk has been far more negative and limiting than they realized, filled with criticisms, doubts, and fears that they would never express to another person, yet have been inflicting upon themselves continuously through unconscious mental habits. The awareness phase can feel uncomfortable initially as you begin recognizing how often you discourage yourself, reinforce limitations, and replay past failures through internal repetition. However, this discomfort serves as motivation for change. For once you clearly see the connection between your internal dialogue and your external results, the desire to improve your self-communication becomes compelling and urgent rather than optional or theoretical. A musician who had struggled with performance anxiety for years discovered that his internal dialogue before every performance consisted of detailed visualizations of everything that could go wrong, conversations about his inadequacies compared to other musicians, and predictions of audience disappointment or criticism. This negative self-talk created such intense anxiety that his performances suffered, confirming his fears and reinforcing the cycle of self-doubt. When he learned to observe these patterns without judgment, he could then deliberately replace the negative internal conversations with encouraging dialogue about his preparation, his love of music, and his excitement about sharing his talents with appreciative audiences. The replacement process requires patience and persistence, since old mental patterns have been reinforced through years or decades of repetition and do not disappear immediately when you decide to think differently. However, every moment of conscious positive self-talk weakens the old patterns while strengthening new ones, gradually shifting the balance until encouraging internal dialogue becomes your natural default, rather than something you must force or remember to do. Creating new internal dialogue patterns works most effectively when you prepare specific phrases, affirmations, and conversations in advance rather than trying to improvise positive self-talk in challenging moments when negative patterns tend to be strongest. Just as actors rehearse their lines before performing, you can rehearse encouraging internal conversations before entering situations where your old patterns might otherwise dominate your thinking. Professional athletes use this preparation technique extensively, developing specific self-talk strategies for different situations they encounter during competition. Before attempting a difficult shot, they remind themselves of their training, their past successes, and their confidence in their abilities. When facing setbacks or mistakes, they have prepared internal conversations that help them maintain focus and motivation rather than spiraling into self-criticism or doubt. These prepared responses become automatic through practice, providing consistent internal support regardless of external circumstances.